Okay, so this scene here, I've just sketched on very briefly a photograph I took in Suzdal. I've painted this a few times before in line and wash, also just in a normal watercolor painting. But I thought I would do a completely new recording of this and try to imply a sunset scene and see how we go. So, very basic sketch. There's a church here in the background which I've just penciled in and a few buildings across. Thinking of getting the light source coming from the right and illuminating the right sides of these buildings, some of the roofs as well. We've got a river running down the front and some shrubs and bushes, trees and things like that. So let's go straight in, and I'm going to actually go in with a pinkish sort of color near the horizon line. So, oops, that is much too dark. So I'm gonna just flatten that out a bit here. And a bit of orange in there. A little bit of orange. That. And some more orange on the other side. Be sure to cut around these buildings as well. It's just going to help you paint them in later on a bit more accurately. Okay. A bit more orange over this side. Okay. More orange in here as well. Probably gone a bit too dark actually near the bottom. That should do the trick. Okay. Now what I'm going to do, I'm going to go straight into the sky with some cerulean blue around here. And get that to blend nicely with the cooler color beneath. Warmer color, I mean. So just touch that on like that. And let it do its thing. I'll have to get this side in before it dries. Just nicely sort of feathered in like that. And let it do its thing. Also like to drop in little bits and pieces like that. I'll be able to do also later on. So I'm just going to go and get in this sky wash. Darker near the top. I'm going to be using some Prussian blue. Use some cobalt blue as well, that works. Just anything that's darker, especially in the corners. That. Some loose cloud shapes just running across as well. And further down the page here is well, I'm going to mix in a bit of this grey and funny kind of colours on the palette because I want to just get in some variation with the clouds. As I'm doing the clouds as well, I'm sort of flipping the brush around and trying my best to just get in some irregular shapes through here. As you go down to the bottom, just make the clouds a little bit smaller as well. That's going to help. Don't want them really big at the bottom. Okay. So that's looking all right. Do think it needs some more darkness at the top, just a little bit more here, like that. Let it do its thing. Some larger cloud shapes as well. I think that's going to make a difference. That. Okay. So I'll let that do its thing, and what I'll do now is I'm going to get in this area of the water, and we're going to mimic the sky by going in with a bit of red, tiny bit of red and a bit of that orange, just a warm color firstly at the top, so around here. So just where the river starts, oops, just around here, mimic that color of the sky and carry this down the page. Bit more orange in there, like that. Okay, and as we get closer to the bottom, this is where we want to add in our blues. So just mixed up a bit of cerulean blue and get that to blend like that. A bit of cobalt blue at the bottom here to finish it off. Working fairly quickly as well. Get some more in here at the bottom, just get that completely painted in. What I'll do as well is drop in some darker bits of Prussian blue mixed in with a bit of brown, and this is just to create that illusion of depth. Some darkness down the bottom, all wet onto wet, like that. Okay. All right. Now comes the important bit. We need to get in the greens, and I want to get them in wet onto wet. So mixing up a bit of this sap green with the same brush, I'm going to go in just around here. Let's see, touch it onto that area, and it should mix slightly, but don't want it to completely combine. I'm just going to wait for that just a moment, but I'll start going into areas like here and start implying bits of sort of shrubs and things like that, darker areas here. Encourage a bit of mixing, and be sure not to forget the left hand side as well, like that. All wet onto wet. There we go. So just going to pretty much obliterate this entire area with this green, even up until the houses over on this side. Swap to a smaller flat brush. I'm starting to find it difficult to cut around now. There we go. Start working on this area again. You have to be pretty quick. Don't want the paint to start drying off. And another thing I like to do, you can add in some darks just at the river bank where everything kind of touches the water. So I'm just picking up a bit of blue mixed in with sepia, and just imply just the area of the riverbank here. Just a little bit of darkness running through like that. And that should spread out a little bit. That. Okay. Even a bit here, just some of these trees you can also get in too, like that. Try to paint as much as I can wet onto wet if possible. It really saves so much time. And you just get this wonderful effect that you can't get otherwise. You never know what's going to happen sometimes. Okay, moving back into this area, I've left it for too long. Picking up some of this sap green and really just going to get in the green here. Cutting around the houses as well, and same thing goes here. I do want to cut around, do a little bit of cutting around work, that just to leave the roofs and things of the houses. Just a bit of white on the paper. That's all it takes. Okay, and go through, finish off this bottom section. That. Get further down the page, I'm just going to add in some blue. You can also add in some directional lines and things like that in the background. Here. Okay. And just darken a bit more, maybe a tiny bit more blue here. And some green mixed in. Get some nice sort of juicy greens at the bottom. And I do feel like I want some these darks left at the bottom here as well, so we'll just get in a bit of that just to mark the edge of the river, like that. Okay, I'm going to try to lift off a little bit of paint using a knife. Just scratch off a little bit of paint in areas. Let's give it a try here. That. One of the little tricks that I use just to add some details, especially near the banks, like that. I'm going to try on this side, bits and pieces here, and I find that it helps to mark where the river is and where it's headed. So where it's coming out from, especially down the corner there. Also it gets in another lighter value. So it works best when you let it dry off just a little bit so that there's some dampness. Okay. I'll leave that bit for a while. I'm just going to go in and get some darks in here while I can. So trick is just to pick up some blue now and just dab it in places like here, and maybe a little, might want to indicate a bush here, for example. Round that off a little bit, maybe a little bush here, something here, little areas here. So you can imply that quite easily by using these wet and wet techniques. And it's just going to mix in with that green to create a darker looking green. It will darken off this area in the corner a bit more, and I'm actually going to later go back into it and get some branches and things. Just get this little bit of some rose trees or something like that over here. And in the background too, I'm going to imply some trees just surrounding the houses over here. Just a bit of darkness around. Add in a bit more sap green if it's turning too dark, or blue. That. If it's still wet, that's even better. Okay. Oops, gone up a little bit too far with that one. And just go in, get the row of trees at the back done, and out the way. And actually going to go back into this area and indicate some dark areas just for the darker tree here, and maybe some darker leaves of this tree there. Okay, just looking at what else we might be able to do. Maybe some undulations and things coming over here this side. Just up to you what you want to imply. While the paper is still damp, you get this opportunity to add in some more details. Do you think these bushes and trees are a bit too flat? So I'm just going to go in and reshape some of them. Okay. Maybe a teeny bit of blue in there as well. Darken that up. And picking up a smaller round brush, flat brush, just to help shape this area, cut around this area more, like that. Okay. Actually a bit of a hill where this church sits on. Okay. See if I can do a little bit more scratching off of some of this paint, especially around the corners here. Some varied marks as well. Bit in the back has already dried off. There's not much that we can do there. Now, having a look at this area, and I think this needs to be just greyed down a little bit. So picking up a flat brush just for these buildings. They shouldn't pop out all that much. I think we'll go into them a bit later actually, because the paper around the buildings is still wet. Okay, do a bit of work with the fan brush. So picking up some blues and greens, just a dark color. I'm going to go in and see if I can indicate some shrubs and things like that. Just some darker ones. And let's get in a bit of brown, red sort of color. This is just going to help a bit with the variation of some of these strokes, some of these values around this area. Some more at the back. Also helps to mark out again the path of the river. Okay, getting there. All right, I'm going to start fiddling around with that area, and give this a quick dry first. I'm going to be extra careful with these buildings and looking at the reference picture, but also I don't want them to stick out and look too detailed with everything. I want to make it loose as well, so keeping that in mind, picking up a bit of this kind of purplish color that I've mixed up. Make sure it's light enough, and I'm going to paint just over the top of it like that. Nothing too difficult. So we'll just get in that base wash like that. There. And on the roof, I might just leave that bit of warm color on that roof like that. And we'll go through and do the same thing on this side. Just get a bit of that yellow ochre and in the roofs. Then we'll pick up some of this greyish color. The bottoms in like that. Okay. So just looking at the reference picture a bit closer now, and going to darken this area of the roof here. Let's get that in like that, just with the round brush, and we can start putting in some details over here, especially for the bottoms of the buildings, little windows as well, like that. That's all I'm doing, nothing too detailed. I don't want it to stick out. And this one here, let's have a look. This area of the roof, just a bit darker, and we've got this area here. It's almost dry brushing, a lot of this actually. And the dome, I really want to emphasize that dome a bit more, and it actually goes up, turns into something. Yep. Right. A bit of the building that comes off the side there, like that. See if I can just get in some windows. Yeah. Okay. Let that do its thing. The others now, I'm just going to just imply some shadows underneath the roofs, and also stretching out to the left side like that. Bit of darkness under the buildings to help anchor it also to the ground. Okay, just gonna add some birds now. Some very basic ones. Help break up the sky. Some smaller ones here. There's not really any rule to how you do this. Just try not to put too many of them in, and just where I feel it's going to help. Okay, so that's looking quite all right. Last step, I am going to get a dark color, just mixing up some brown here on the palette, some sepia, and I'm going to be just implying some branches and things coming in off the side. So let's try this. Some coming off here. That. 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 Try and get these to sort of separate out into two branches, and then again, that's, and some on the left hand side as well. Just some pretend leaves like that as well. And get those branches in. That's all we need to do, just to imply. And the more randomized, the more random it looks, the better. Don't think about which way I'm going in terms of the branches, but I do look at the overall composition from a distance. So I sort of stand up and have a look at it from a distance and see if it's looking all right or not. Sometimes you can get carried away and go into one area a bit too much. So it's always important to stand back and have a look to see if it all balances out, if it makes sense. Okay. Might leave it as that. Check out these tutorials down the side here. I've got a couple of playlists that will help you get some ideas and improve your watercolors.